Okay, so good morning. My name is Rupin and I'm a conscious parenting coach. I help people to find the spiritual journey in their parenting by understanding themselves on a deeper level. We talk about their past childhood experiences and we try to make sure that doesn't affect the way that they parent their children. And yesterday I was lucky enough to be on a train surrounded by people, and the group that I was sitting across from was quite a big family. There was 4 children all in a row, and the first thing that I noticed was how peaceful everything was, and all of them were eating fruit. There was 2 that were having a banana, there was 2 that were having an apple, and everybody was just really engaged in the fruit, and the parents were all busy working out what train station they needed to get off at. So essentially just leaving the children to their own devices. They were able to be occupied by the fruit, and I could see how much enjoyment they were having eating it. Interestingly, I noticed that how much smaller the bites were that they were having to take than what I might have to take on an apple. And just wondered whether that transition of growing up happens without really noticing that at one point you're taking like 10 bites to have one side of an apple, and then before you know it, like your mouth is big enough that you could just munch down on the whole of one side of an apple in one bite. So that was just something that I noticed. The other things that I was aware of was that as the children started to get a bit bored and needed a bit more attention, there was a lady who was not the parent that was with them who asked the dad if the youngest child would be willing to come and sit with this lady who is not the parent. So essentially, I think this was like a family member, this was perhaps a friend who was going to babysit the youngest whilst everybody was starting to get bored of the fruit. First of all, the game was to hold the child on her lap, and she was trying to talk to him and trying to speak to him about who he was, to try and engage with him. She was using his name to try and get him to respond, to maybe smile or laugh. And then afterwards the game changed to releasing the platform that he was sitting on, which was her knees. And so she was spreading her knees wider and essentially dropping the child down in a swift, quick motion, and then catching him with her hands, catching his head and catching his back. And when she was doing this, she was screaming and she was saying, "Oh my gosh, oh my goodness, what are we gonna do? You keep falling. What are we gonna do with you?" So this continued for about 5 minutes, quite repeatedly, and the child was still not engaged. The child was essentially ignoring this game, or as best as he could. It was kind of being thrown about for this game, which the intention of the game was to entertain him, right? So he was not entertained by the game, he wasn't finding it fun or enjoyable, and then he was the one that was actually being thrown around. So it was very difficult for him to perhaps say that wasn't okay, but I think everybody except for this person could probably feel that this wasn't a game that he was able to partake in or see any value in. Now I understand what the game is to spark some excitement, to create some drama, and to essentially pique activity and engagement by having a swift movement and perhaps some sort of jolt. Now, what I wanted to point out was that this game perhaps is one that leads to and builds on the fear. The game is that you were scared that I was going to drop you, or the game is that you didn't know when you were next going to be dropped. So the game is a game based on anxiety and based on fear. So something to be aware of, something to watch out for, that the games that we play with the children don't need to involve them being terrified, them being the victim of this method of enjoyment, which perhaps is more for the adult. Especially in this case, as I tell you the rest of the story, you'll see that this game is more because the adult felt that the child was unengaged and perhaps was embarrassed by their lack of personability when it came to looking after the baby or the youngest child. So being conscious of the anxiety of the game, I'm going to make some notes here. So we've got games of So these games of anxiety is something that we don't feel the fear. We're not scared of the game because we know that nothing's going to happen. We know that the movement is our knees and not the train. And we also know that we're going to catch the person. So we're not suffering any of the anxiety when we play these games. They are experiencing it wholeheartedly. They don't separate the game. They don't know that you're going to catch them. And so that is the point in the game, is that you are kind of trying to convince them about how willing you are to drop them. But then the fun thing is that you don't ever drop them. So the whole point in the game is to leave them unsure. So that's the games of anxiety. This was quite a long train journey. It was a continued conversation that I was able to essentially be a part of, be a witness to. And the next part was that the adult wanted a kiss from the child, and the child essentially just ignored the request and didn't say or do anything, just continued to sit there, continued to be the victim of this game without crying, without sort of saying anything. And the energy of the conversation moved to can I have a kiss? I would like a kiss. And it became a pleading bargain of desperation to receive this kiss that the child was unwilling to entertain at all. So the child had quite firm boundaries and was willing to suffer the consequences of not giving this physical affection that was being requested. Perhaps this was a step too far in the engagement. I think the child was quite content to sit on this person's lap, was quite content to hold hands, was quite content to be held, but the kiss was a step too far. And something to be aware of is that sometimes with the relationship it's a bit of a dance between the adult and the child, and as perhaps you push for the next level of engagement, it's good to see if that level of engagement is something that the child is willing to engage with. And so you kind of do this dance where you move together up and down the scales of engagement, rather than the adult demanding what they want and the child having to keep up or to perform so that the adult's level of engagement is met. Then on top of that, this particular type of affection, kissing, is something that we do want to be very careful of. What we are trying to do as conscious adults who are inviting a conscious presence into the next generation is to be careful of teaching the children, teaching the young people how to effectively hold their boundaries, to respect their body, and to ensure that other people, strangers and predators, are unable to manipulate the children and force their sort of toxic and deceitful needs onto children who have not been given a right to say no. This was 15 minutes of convincing this child, please can I have a kiss, I want a kiss. Something it would be really important to me if I could have a kiss. So it was a very difficult train journey for me. I had to hold my peace and to allow people who aren't asking me for help to parent in the best way that they possibly can. And this wasn't even the parent, but to be that adult role model as best as they possibly can. So let's add some stuff to this list here. We've got and healthy, loving boundaries is when the parents treat the children in the way that the children should be allowed to treat themselves. So parents giving their children the permission to feel safe, to not be violated, to not be invaded, and therefore when they grow they will be able to know where the boundaries are and to know how to hold those boundaries should that kind of situation come up. I can imagine that this young boy might one day have a situation where somebody is asking them for a kiss or some sort of sexual advance without consideration for whether this growing boy, perhaps a man by now, wants that, and if this is a consistently reinforced way to interact with people, then perhaps this young boy as he grows won't know that he's allowed to say no, and that he's allowed to mean it, and that 20 minutes of pestering shouldn't be a good reason to give in. I don't know how many of us could last 20 minutes of somebody asking for something, whether it be a kiss or whether it be something else. 20 minutes is quite a long time, and this is coming from the adult, not the child. So it's all very difficult to understand what this young boy must have been going through, wondering whether if he just gave in it would be easier, and whether this person would leave him alone. So it's very difficult to know. And the next thing that happened was that all 4 of the children ended up kissing the toy, the little doll. So everybody had to show the youngest child how to kiss the doll, so that the youngest child would know how to kiss the doll when it was his time, and then would know how to kiss the babysitter when it was her turn. So very dark and twisted when you look at it from a consciousness aspect, but in reality it was all probably innocent and unintentional. It's just that's normally where we need to evolve, is that actually it's not the stuff as parents that we know that we're doing wrong that needs to change. It's quite a lot of the stuff that we're just unaware of the implications and what this could mean, and how this could be translated into the subconscious mind as an adult. So this is what I help for my clients. I help them to just take a fresh pair of eyes and to see how this might be negatively impacting the future of this child's development. What we also do is we look into the past to find out where this might have come from. Where is this desperate need for affection coming from? And I think in this case, this is probably a fear of rejection, and that there's some humiliation aspect to being rejected in public by a child. And so the adult, this babysitter, who is possibly a family member or friend, might need to just have a look at whether she is suffering herself from some anxiety in these moments, and then to start to enter the present moment through her breath, so that she can start to meditate through her own feelings of rejection and abandonment, because this child isn't on purpose trying to make her feel like she's not a kissable person. It's not the intention of the child, just doesn't want to engage in this activity. And when we feel rejected, sometimes we take it very personally and we think that it's a reflection of us. So what I would like to have helped with this lady, if she was one of my clients, would have been to help her to put that pause into the moment, to start to ask herself, is this actually a reflection of me if this young boy doesn't want to kiss me? And does this young boy have a right to not kiss me if they don't want to, after asking them once and being rejected once? Like, do they have a right to say no and to mean it? And of course they do. Even though they're a child, they don't have less rights to their own body and their own autonomy, especially with parents. Like, they do need to perhaps in the moment decide whether the child should be the one to decide what happens with their body. Especially in the UK, the laws do sort of rely on the parent's judgment as to what is required for the child. This was not a parent, and this was about a romantic, the affection was not a necessary requirement for the child's well-being. This was for the ego of the babysitter. So that's what the direction is that she and I would go in if we were coaching. So hopefully that helps to understand, to illuminate that issue. It could well be that this adult was hoping to feel more complete and full through this baby's affection, and didn't in the end, and couldn't move past it without. So and maybe it had something to do with me sitting right across, maybe it was something to do with the audience who were also aware of how this baby was refusing to kiss her. So plenty of things there to absorb and to try to understand about people, about ourselves, about our parent-child relationships, and about the autonomy and protection that we should have over ourselves. Look deeply inside. You don't need to take things personally if somebody doesn't want to engage with you and give you the affection that you're looking for. That isn't a reflection of you. Want to know what to do next? I can speak to you more about it. Feel free to drop a comment, ask what questions you have. Normally the answer is to give yourself whatever it is that you feel like you're missing. So if there's some affection that's not there present in your life and you're seeking it from your child or baby, then perhaps you need to be a little bit more connected to yourself, to be a bit more intimate with yourself, to understand your heart and desires better, so that you can be the one who fulfills yourself completely and fills out any voids or gaps that you might feel are present in your heart and in your being and in your spiritual essence. So hopefully that's useful. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. It's Rupin, Rupin, at consciousparentingcoach.co.uk. I'm going to sign out just now, and I will catch up with you really soon. Thanks for listening and tuning in. Bye, everybody.